Okay, let's talk interest. Interest can be good and it can be bad. If you are investing money in a bank, you want to make interest. You want your money to grow by doing nothing other than leave it in an account that's earning interest. If you are borrowing money, like on a credit card or a car loan, you don't really want interest because they're just charging you extra for having to borrow money from them. So interest can be both good and bad, depending on if you're the one making it or you're the one paying it, okay? Let's look at this formula. This is the interest rate formula. You can easily calculate interest by multiplying. These are simple multiplication. The principal times the rate times the time. Notice time is always in years. You may have a tricky question that says you're going to leave it in a bank account for 6 months. Well, wait a second. That means then that your time would be 1/2 or 0.5. That's half of a year because the time is always represented in years. Rate, just to refresh your memory, is always written as a decimal. Principal, that's the starting amount that you are investing. So let's say that you are going to invest in an account and you're going to start with $400. So if that's your starting amount, then we're going to go ahead and put that in place of our principal. So 400 is our principal. Our rate is 4.5%. But remember, we always write that as a decimal. Over here, this is the same formula, but I wanted you to see it written a different way. They take the rate and divide by 100. That's the same thing as shifting that decimal back 2 swooshes. Yes, that's a fancy math terminology. Swooshes. So this interest rate written as a decimal would become 0.045. Okay, so that's our rate, 0.045. I'm plugging it into my formula. And then it says that we are going to multiply it times the time. In this case, we're going to leave it in for 3 years. Since it's already represented in years, I can just leave it alone. So we're just going to go ahead and let the calculator do all the work. And so our interest equals 400 multiplied by 0.045 equals times 3 equals. So I'm showing that on this account, this interest would equal $54. Okay? Now, just be careful because sometimes the question will ask, like this right here, if you want to know the new amount, you need to take the starting principal, which was 400, and add the interest. So if you want to know how much interest you made, the answer would be $54. If you want to know how much is in the account, don't forget to add the original amount that you put in. You would be pretty upset if you deposited 400 and you made money and then they handed you $54. You'd be like, well, wait a second, what about the 400 that I started with? They should be handing you $454, the original principal plus the interest that you made. Okay? Real simple, basic, simple interest. Let your calculator do all the work. Now we're going to talk about compound interest. So we're actually going to do the same scenario that we just looked at with simple, but we're going to use compound interest instead of simple. Compound interest basically means that they're adding the interest back onto the principal and kind of like starting over each period. Sometimes the compounding period is once a year, once a month, once a quarter. You really need to pay attention to how often they are compounding the interest. And that's what this N represents right here. The number of times in a year that they're going to compound that interest and make it grow even more. So what was our situation before? I think we started with $400 if I remember correctly. Our rate was 4.5%, I think. And I think we're going to leave it in there for 3 years. So let's see how our numbers compare at the end. And then the one thing you'll notice in this formula, it's A equals. So this is going to give us the amount that we actually have in that account at the end. You don't have to worry about adding that amount back to the principal. They already did it, hence why this P is right here that you're going to multiply by. So here we go. Our original principal was 400. And then we've got 1 plus. Remember, the R must always be represented as a decimal. So the rate is going to be, again, 0.045 divided by n. Well, we're going to compound once a month. That means we're going to do 12 times a year. Okay? And then again, our exponent here is to the nt. Since we're compounding once a year, our n is 12 and our t is 3 because we're going to leave it in there for 3 years. So this situation, it's really important that you just do things in the correct order of operation. Again, you're going to let your calculator do most of the work, but it is important that you do things in the correct order of operation. For example, I would figure out what is this exponent so that I can even plug it in. So this exponent is 36 because 12 times 3 is 36. So on the calculator, I would do this first. So on my calculator right now, I am doing 0.045 divided by 12 equals. And I get this tiny, tiny decimal, 0.003, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit +1 on my calculator. I'm going to write it out so you guys can see what it looks like so far. So far, I'm going to have 400, and in my parentheses, I have 1.00375 raised to the power of 36. Now, it's important that we do things in the correct order, and exponents need to come first. So I'm going to go ahead and raise my 1.00375. I'm going to hit that raise it to the power of button, 36 equals. And this is going to equal some decimal that goes on and on. I'm not writing all these down because you'd be watching this video for forever, but it's something like that. And then the last step for this situation for compound interest is to multiply by the principal. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply that times 400. And I don't round until the very end. Otherwise, your answers will be a few pennies off. And you better believe the bank wants every penny. I'm getting a total of $457. And we're going to go with 70 cents. So that's how much money you would have in your account if you went ahead and did compound interest instead of simple interest. Remember our answer before? Simple interest was $454. So by just choosing compound instead of simple, we've made an extra $3. I mean, it sounds like a big whoop-de-doo, but if you think about it, most people don't invest $400. Most people are investing $400,000 or $4,000 or $40,000. They're investing bigger amounts, and so every little bit adds up, and it does matter. So compound interest will absolutely make you more money at the end as an investor.